Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in Charlie Bellmore of many projects, but today we're going to talk a lot about Kings and Liars. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I am pretty good for the end of the year. It's been a wild year again.
Yes, it has. The last two fucking years have been
Yeah,
last 2 years have been a crazy 10 years.
really, that's well said. It's like a casino with no windows and no clocks.
Yeah.
Um, it goes without saying, first of all, happy holidays. Second of all,
Happy to you.
I thank you. I do sincerely hope that like you, your brother, your friends, your family, all your related members are as in good a shape as possible in one piece and whole because we've all lost a lot of people and lost a lot, just like lost whole careers and all kinds of things. So I hope you guys are hanging in there as well as.
I had this weird um I had a baby January 2020. January she'll be 2 January 2nd. So we had like a month and a half or like two and a half months of like, hey, it's the baby, and we're driving. Like I live in New York now, and it's like, oh, we're driving to Connecticut to see grandma and grandpa, like all that kind of stuff. And then it was just lockdown, and like 4 or 5 months in, one of the guys I work with, D. Snyder, called me, and he just said, "Listen, I just want to, because I don't want to make it." I don't want to pretend nothing happened because lots of bad stuff happened, and we all know somebody's sick or permanently damaged or lost or whatever from COVID. And he goes, "Well, I just want to give you this tiniest positive spin." And he said, you were trying to, go on tour for the summer, right? And I had been talking to a couple different bands about potentially going out and just playing guitar for them for the summer. And I said, yeah. And he goes, instead of having to do all that, you're going to get like the whole first year of your daughter's life. And he goes, while it totally sucks for you, for everybody, he goes, just at the end of it, when it all ends, just go back and realize, just think about it. Like, oh, yeah, I mean, a lot of it sucked, but let me just look at that little tiny silver lining, and there's definitely been moments where I've used that silver lining, you know?
Understandable, and you can't. Time is the one thing we can't make more of. You can
Yeah.
always make more riffs. You can always try again with another album. You can do other things. You can rebook tours. You can't rebook life. And
Yeah.
D once again, always clutch with the wisdom. One of my favorite people ever,
He's the
and
best.
he is the best. I'm glad you had that time. We all lost. Everybody related to the music business lost a lot, and I know woe is me, woe is us. But I do say that we're beside production like you and your brother and writing. You do make money on the road. You do make your money
Big time.
going on tour, collecting guarantees, going earning your living, handing a record to somebody over a merch table.
Yeah.
That's how we make money. That's how D makes money.
Yeah.
I'm proud of D for coming out with Leave a Scar, which is fantastic, and the
Oh,
whole
thank
year,
you.
and you as well, and the whole year all of you had with the last couple of years. But at the same time, it's just like the loss of the road, tour managers, bus drivers, merch slingers, local people, cool
Yep.
people, venues. It's just a heartbreaker, and that just no let up really. But on the positive, we have new music to listen to, and so of all your projects, it's like I feel least acquainted with Kings and Liars, and I've been bumping this new record and Transition Animals, and I was like, man, this is fantastic stuff. What have I've been just like, this is the one project of all of yours that I haven't managed to sleep on that could be like my favorite because it's like musically in my wheelhouse. It's like stuff I really heavy and these wonderful vocal stuff the three of you are doing, which I want to get into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank
Vocals.
you. It was supposed to be released on December 4th. and it was like I don't know, it was like September or something. They're like, yeah, it's gonna be there mid-January now because of all this stuff. And like, oh shit, okay. And luckily we hadn't like really gone hard with any sort of announcement yet because we were waiting until like Black Friday to like do all the album announcements. So all right, let's just push it back. Well, we'll book our little tour, and I was more excited to tour before, like right after Thanksgiving, because in my mind, I mean, you said before you were an East Coaster, so my immediate thought, the moment you're going to book a tour, in the East Coast, like in the cold months, is how do I avoid the snow? That's basically all you do. And so I was like, all right, so we got to do this now. And it's going January to February. It's just like 9 or 10 days, but you're like, here we go. Like we might have to. There's like literally the first show. We're just deadheading. We're 21-hour drive from New Haven, Connecticut, to like Pompano Beach, Florida, which is like right next to Miami. Because we were just like, let's just drive away. We'll just get out of the snow. And then I think the closest we play like Baltimore, like right towards the end, and I said Baltimore's fine because even if it snows, it's a city. People will walk. It's different.
Yeah, and other than have any East Coast person knows, other than dealing with 95, I
Yeah.
95, yeah, there were worse things to do than drive south for the winter. I just interviewed another band earlier today that was like, "Oh, one of our first tour stops is next weekend in Michigan," and I was like, "No, why?
No.
Why would you
Dear
do
God,
that?
no.
Why would you do that?" But they'll manage. I think it's a look like they hadn't been there in a while, and they were trying to hit that market. And it's just what do you do?
You got to go where the people like it.
You got to go where the people are. That's awesome. Good luck to you. Like I said, this record's terrific. I can't wait for people to hear it. Because it really took whoa, it took me aback. I was like, wow,
Thank you.
this is fantastic, great songwriting. And again, like anybody who knows, you guys have been around a long time, you and your brother, and even Chris, like you've been working together a long time. And then of course the D records, and now the Corpse Grinder record you're also part of, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm supposed to do. I don't really do reaction videos, but I'm starting to, and my first one is going to be the Acid Vat song. So
Nice.
yeah, so I'm pumped about it, even though it's not a thing that's natural for me. Most of our channels, interviews and news, but here we go, and but it's terrific, man. So, and I heard the George record too is pretty great. So
Awesome.
yeah, man. Just so you worked on this record, and I'll be honest, you've been in the music business a long time. The end of the year used to be like a dead zone until Record
Yes.
Store Day. Black Friday was a real thing in the last 10 years. Black Friday, the holiday shopping was box sets and Christmas records and
And legacy artists, quote
legacy
unquote.
artists. Neil Young could put out a record in December, and people would be like, "Oh, Neil Young, cool."
I'll get it for Uncle Larry. Yeah, because
Right.
it's yeah, I know.
But new music wasn't really a thing, and I think the last couple of years with the deluge of records being delayed and then having to come out, like, "Oh, well, we better put this thing out." And even in some of the music marketing and PR, a little bit of work that I've done in that field, I tell artists, like, do you really need to put this out at the end of the year when everybody is releasing a record? Because there were 2-3 weeks in a row, there was like 150 records a week in metal.
Yeah.
In just rock and metal. I was like, you don't really want to put a single out right now, do you? Maybe fortuitous for you guys to push it back, start the new year fresh, start the beginning of the year on a high,
Yeah.
and take it from there. So I think that's a pretty good move.
Yeah, I think we got lucky. We got lucky on it. Like it wasn't like we had to make an announcement and say, "Oh, we have to push back the release." So it was early enough, and it's very funny because it's like it's basically like we've talked to like vinyl pressers in a couple different places, and it's basically like Adele and ABBA's fault. Like they just hired every vinyl plant, those two bands to just press like crazy, and it's like, all right, well, I mean, you guys don't need this. Like, there's some punk band right now that's going to make 2,000 copies of this vinyl and go on tour, and that's literally going to be how they get home. But I'm glad that like somebody's mom can get a vinyl record of Adele.
Right. For those that don't know, so Adele has a new record out, and Adele is great. I'm not all right. Like
She's a very good singer.
excellent singer, great career, just a handful of records in 10 years or whatever. But she decided, this is like her first big vinyl. When vinyl's a thing now. Her album comes as a 2 LP for just a standard vinyl release, and she pressed 1 million copies of this record. I don't know about
Dear Lord.
I know ABBA had a big record this year, and good for them. I was never a fan, not a disco person, except for a couple of tracks. But like Adele, personally, like to press 1 million pieces of vinyl for just her release. First of all, 500,000 people gonna just buy her record on vinyl, like maybe, but not even that seems like way egregious. Like you could have did a quarter of that sold out. I guess she didn't want to sell out and be out, but like.
Yeah.
No way, man. Just it's not necessary, like what she just did, But on the other hand, I'll give, Adele. I like to say Adele taketh and giveth, She taketh away, but she also giveth, because she was really mad at Spotify because their auto default was shuffle. So if you wanted to hear an Adele song and put on the first track of a record, which is usually the single for a pop artist, it skipped randomly to anything else, not necessarily even
Oh,
her
okay.
album. And then she apparently influenced them to change the default across Spotify, where now the default is play a full record through one at a time, which is
Nice.
good, inherently good for music of all
Absolutely.
stripes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I want to be mad at her because I love vinyl, and a lot of my bands are now having to. Well, the vinyl will come out in June of 22 or
Yeah.
23, or we're not going to put a record out in 22 now because we can't have the vinyl till summer of 23. And maybe this will inspire more plants to pop up. Maybe people will be entrepreneurial. I've seen a couple of record labels, like the way Victory Records used to have their own shirt plant and poster plant. Now labels may start doing their own vinyl pressing,
That'd be
which
cool.
that would be cool, but also like, cause ugh, why?
Yeah, it's for whatever reason, it's become like the what it's the highest selling media right now, right? It beat
It
CDs and
for the
everything.
first time ever,
Yeah.
which is wild to me, man. We're probably about the same age. Maybe I'm a little older than you. Vinyl was my first thing that I ever had. Then cassettes. I missed 8 tracks, but maybe people in my family had them. So it's just wild to me that vinyl is back and so popular. And, to everybody listening, like, I'm not gatekeeping or judgmental. Good for vinyl and good for Adele. But, like, also, my
Yeah.
people on my Bandcamp bands for, my underground metal and rock bands and any DIY artist, indie rock, pop, whatever, punk. It's going to be hard for a while to get your stuff pressed in a timely manner that matches up with your release. And as you know, most fans are not going to buy something twice unless they really love it or love the artist. They're not going to buy twice. It's just
Yeah.
unlikely. There's too much free music in the world for them to buy
Yeah.
to inspire them to wait for the vinyl but stream our stuff in the meantime. It's just not the behavior of listeners. I wish it was.
Yeah. Maybe I know the we're kind of getting off on a tangent, but I like it. I'd always heard that like the biggest market in every band is like what they call the super fan, like just the absolute diehard, the super fan. And I was like, well, I guess I'm kind of a like I'm like a whatever. I'm a Metallica super fan or Alice in Chains super fan, whatever it was at the time of that particular age. I would go back and think about it. And I was playing guitar. I joined Toxic Holocaust in 2015 for 3 years. And literally like the first weekend we played like a club and a dude came in. We had all the albums on vinyl. We got like 200 or 300 copies of them. It was so heavy. And we had them all sitting there and people would come in every single show. They'd walk right in. They'd walk right when the doors open. They'd walk right to the merch booth and say, "I'd like one of every vinyl, please." And then they would get them, and then they would leave and go put them in their car and then come back. And I was like, "Oh, okay, those are super fans." Like
super
that's
fans.
amazing.
And Joel has always been great at doing merch and gear.
Yes.
A genius at that, actually. I'll now steer it back to the proper direction, which is let's talk about this record. Let's talk about the songwriting team of you three guys.
Yeah.
And when you go to make music that is for this project, do the songs just you make a riff, you write a song, you jam, however you guys work together? Do you say this is good for Kings and Liars, this is better for somebody else, this will save for a later date? How do you choose?
90% of the time it's it's whenever I'm focused on. So like for example, we had quickly like we had already written this record and we could talk about it in a second. We wrote this record like in 2019 and it was recorded like that fall, and then we had a singer with us and he quit, and then COVID happened, and then I could talk about that in a second. But like when COVID hit, I was sitting in the house. Secretly D had told us that he was retiring, so as far as we're concerned there's no more D. And I just said, I just don't give a shit, I'm just gonna will it, I'm just writing a new record. And I wrote I wrote the other guitar player, Nick Petrino. I said, listen, I'm going to send you songs that I write completely, and you can do the double guitar thing because I want to do lots of double solos because we played festivals for 2.5 years and nobody's doing double solos. And, not in no in no way a slight to Judas Priest. Like even Judas Priest doesn't do it, because they lost Glenn and Richie Faulkner is a tremendous guitar player. Oh my God. But Andy Sneap just isn't like that huge lead guy. So they just kind of sometimes they do duels, but a lot of times they're kind of, just throwing it all over to Richie, which is fine. But I said, with nobody doing them, there's a fun space to play with. So I'm just going to do this. So I just wrote, there's 12 songs in Leave a Scar. I wrote 10 of them. And I went through, and when we were recording the record at that time, I gave everything I had. I try not to hold back. I just gave everything I had to that record. Like a song on the D album, like Before I Go, like I would totally, if I had written that a year before, that might have been a Kings and Liars song, who knows, or it might have been a Josta song, just depending on where I was. I do get inspired by who I'm working with, so it's like if I'm working with Josta, we're talking like, we should write a Slayer song or a bunch of thrash metal songs, which is a thing that's happening. Like if we're doing something like that, I'll just listen to a bunch of that stuff. So I'm more inspired in that kind of vein. My personal songwriting, if I'm not writing for anybody, is gonna sound a lot like the 90s because I'm 40 years old. So that was my touch tones. But it's also going to have like one of my buddies is just like, it's, you guys sound like, it sounds like whatever. A lot of those bands from the 90s, whether you're going to look at like an Alice in Chains or a Metallica or all that kind of stuff. And then everybody says like, oh, and also I hear Queens of the Stone Age. And one of my buddies goes, and all your stuff goes like through this like New Orleans filter. And it's basically just because for like, long before I met him, like looking at me, when with his pajama bottoms, the first time I ever met him, I was a fan of Crowbar, and I knew them from like Beavis and Butthead and friends liking them. And then when SOD did Bigger Than the Devil and they had Crowbar out with them, I'd watch that show, and instead of like passively paying attention, I really paid attention, and I was like, this is cool. Like I feel like it was the first band that like they would take a breakdown riff and it was just the verse. And you're like, holy shit, like this is already the heaviest I've ever heard, and you're gonna go somewhere else. And so I was always inspired by that. So like what I do with Kings and Liars, I try to do it with D. A lot of times Josta isn't into it. I go too soft with Josta when I do it. But when I write for myself, I try to make something really heavy. Like for example, the main riff for Hang On to Dear Life. And that's like a cool ass breakdown riff or something. It's got a nice groove to it. And then I put melody over it that maybe doesn't fit, but it works. And then the chorus is just like, I grew up with a dad that like loved the Beatles and the Kinks and like first album Van Halen and stuff like that. So it's like all fun pop sensibility. And I'm like, you can do that in heavy metal and not be corny. It just has to be good. Like, but I like the idea of doing something that shouldn't kind of be there. And then by the second time you hear it, you're just like, oh no, I like this. Like, this is great. Like but if you go through a lot of the songs, I just love putting like heavy melody in for the choruses. Cause it's just to me, it's just my favorite thing. like I love harmonies, and I love all of a sudden just making like a really dense, like very focused, heavy riff, just open, wide open, and just do that traditional like four chord kind of chorus thing.
First of all, shout out to my dude Nick Petrino, is a friend of mine and a friend of Ghost Cult. I love that kid.
Nice.
One of the best guitar players in the absolute world right now. Also, when you say things like Beatles and Alice in Chains and harmonies, I also think of King's X, which is like the highest compliment I can pay anybody vocally. So when I
Thank
hear
you.
these like unison vocal lines, how do you guys choose to split it up? Because it sounds really seamless, like very like you worked on it a lot. Every track has these beautiful layered vocals.
Yeah, we we worked on it a lot. I'll try to not be too long, but we had a singer. He was in the band for a couple years. Um, this band was just always a side project that I had. The first version of the band was like a three piece, and I was just the singer, and it would just kind of just go through little lineups, and it was like, oh, I want to go on tour this summer, and then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, Kingdom of Sorrow is going to go on do Mayhem Fest, so don't book that tour. And I was still working a full time job, so like summer tours just kind of became okay. I got to make sure I got time for the bigger artists that I work with, and then our singer was just he just wasn't in a place to be in the band anymore, and we had just booked a show opening for Rat in New Haven. They asked us to play. The promoter was like, "Hey, we'd love you to play with Rat." This is 2019, and it's like a month and a half away. We don't have a singer, and like I always do, I just said yes because my rule has always been just say yes and figure it out later. And I just said yes, and I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I don't know. Can we get this guy to sing? Can we get this guy to sing? My brother is personal friends with one of the American Idols. Like he was his roommate when he won American Idol, like just in this whirlwind. Nick Fradiani, and like we literally like wrote him like, hey, would you want to sing for the band just for this, even for this one show? It would just be kind of fun. Like maybe that would be a fun idea. And nothing worked obviously, and we just kept asking around, and I sang on like just two demos. Like I took the vocals off two songs that we had from with our singer. And I just sang on them. And before I sent them to to the band, I sent them to Dee's manager, who's also a manager for us, a booking agent. And said, "Listen, did he sound good? Like I don't know. Do I sound good, or does it sound like shit, or what?" And he just like wrote back like, "If you ever ask me this again, I'm gonna kill you because you sound so good. You're like a moron for thinking you don't sound good, and you should be ashamed of yourself." And
Wow.
I was like, okay, all right. So I sent it to the guys, and so these were all songs that just had one guy singing on them. So when we did that show, I just said, okay, I just can't sing straight through. Let's have you sing this part. Okay, maybe I'll sing this. And we just kind of broke them up in little chunks like that, just because in our minds, we just figured it's less to learn. We had we had 2.5 weeks or three weeks at that point, to really do it. And played the show and it went well. And then we had another show that went well. And then I started just going through and figuring out all the lyrics. We had like a bunch of like humming lyrics and some like rough ideas and already. And I kind of just put it all together and then just said, okay, I don't want to sing all this. I want everybody to sing. Here's what I have. And we would just go through, and my brother's a genius producer, and he would be listening and he'd be like, you know what? For this song, this part, Chris would sound so much better if he sang the verse. Let's have him sing the verse. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And and then he would say, oh, I don't like these words. Let's alter them a little bit. And we would just, so it's kind of just me laying the foundation and then just us really going back and kind of rebuilding it, once we decided what would be ours, and there's obviously a few songs that, just I sing, and but most of them are kind of split. And what's wild is some of them we forget. What, like, we just started relearning all of them for tour, and we were like laughing, going like, this part I couldn't remember which was my line and which was your line, because our voices, we've been singing together for like 25 years almost. So it's like we have very different voices, but when they lock in, sometimes you're like, is that me on the high part or you on the high part? So it's, but yeah, it was just, you just picking as you went, like whatever felt best.
First of all, singing and playing at the same time is hard. For those that don't know, it is actually a skill you have to learn. Some people can do it naturally, but it is hard. Does your brother sing and play drums at the same time equally well?
He does it begrudgingly. He, there's a couple parts where we have like a 3-part harmony, or there'll be 2 harmonies behind, like, some ahs or something. And some of the stuff he just said, I don't want to do it. And some of the stuff he said, we all right, I agree, we have to use that part. But I made a joke saying that I was going to tell D, like, hey, if we need another singer, my brother's an excellent singer. And he's like, I'll quit the fucking band. I do not want to sing, because he just hates, he hates the idea of like the Madonna mic, where you could sing the whole time, like Tommy Lee, that
Bobby
kind of
Brown.
Madonna. But then if he has to lean over to hit the mic, it has to stay there the whole song. He's like, I don't have the money where like the guy, like, when Dave Grohl used to sing in Nirvana, where he would slide the mic over, then pull it away.
Or
So he's
Portnoy with
just,
the Bron Dollar, right, from Mastodon with the
yeah.
spinny microphone thing.
Yeah. And then one of those other guys, can't remember who it was. I think it's Hootie and the Blowfish. He's got one that loops over his head, so he can just like lean forward and sing, and so that way he can like do rolls and it won't get in your way. And you're just like, right. There's so many pitfalls with it. So he does it when he has to, and then it's like the mic is thrown right away. the moment he doesn't have to use it, it swings right out of the frame.
That's amazing. I had to ask, so thank you for speaking on behalf of your brother in that regard. So, as we look into the year, you have these dates coming up and this awesome album coming out, but also the challenge is, let's throw away the pandemic for a second, just put it aside. You can't, but for the sake of hypotheticals, let's put it away. You guys have a writing and production schedule. Maybe George is going to want to hit the road. I know Cannibal Corpse has dates booked, but I'm sure George wants to tour behind this incredible record.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows what D has in store next. He didn't really get to tour much at all for Leave a Scar.
No, he played 2 shows.
The 2 shows, right? And the one was like the little private affair. So, the live stream thing. So, lots on the stove. How do you make sure that Kings and Liars now has its own footing against all these other demands in your life, you and your brother?
Well, the nice thing is, we knew the general time of when, Corpse Grinder was going to come out. So we knew, let's do it. Like, it turned out to be a month prior, we release. And so we moved that. So that way we have our space. We could do a little thing. I think that album comes out, and then I think there's a Cannibal tour like right then almost. It's very close. And I've heard, I've heard some internal dialogue from, a couple friends of George's, like, when are you guys going to be free? And my whole thing is, you just ask us and we'll make it happen. Like right now with Kings and Liars, we're looking at stuff in the spring, we're looking at stuff in the fall, whether that be support tours or whatever kind of stuff. And then, probably for the foreseeable future, for at least the next 2 or 3 months, we'll try to not look at summer stuff, just because, for a bunch of summers in a row, like, Jamie did that Jostas and Friends thing, which, I think I only did the only one I ever even did was Josta versus Winstein, because I was always on tour, so I couldn't do it. So that might happen. Maybe George gets asked to do some festivals. Who knows? D, D is just, when we started this whole thing, he very early said, I don't want to play all the clubs. And he said this in interviews too. I'm not like breaking any ground here, but he said, I don't want to do the, the crazy road dog thing. Like, I want to just, so we hear about all of his stuff like far in advance. And there's a bunch of talk for stuff, in the, maybe in the summer, but there's also, the weird thing is, it's like, there's some festivals that are playing this summer in Europe, and it's the 2020 lineup in 2022, so it's like technically there's, unless you add a day, there's no room for us at the inn anyway, so it's just kind of a wait and see thing. And you have to try to, even though you cannot serve more than one master at the same time, you have to try to figure out a way to do it when, when you're kind of like a gun for hire, it kind of becomes a thing, you just say, here's when I know we're, like, for example, we're playing in Key West, Florida with D like 2 weeks before the Kings and Liars tour. And I purposely booked it 2 weeks. Just God forbid somebody gets COVID down in Key West. So we got like 2 weeks. Okay, we're good. I feel better. Let's go. Like, that's because I'm just like, that's all you can do.
Smart. And at least with D has other interests, that movie he's working on, Broadway
Yeah.
potentially, things he's doing. George obviously has Cannibal off the back of that incredible record last year to still do. How wild is it? To me, I think about things that I think about, my journalist brain is like, how did some of these things happen from a conversation on Jamie's podcast, that now he has a record label, D came out with an album, a great live album, came back to do another album, George has an album, Kirk was going to do an album anyway, but kind of like got the kick in the ass from Jamie to do the
Yeah.
finish it. Like, now Joss is back kind of with a new record label after he had kind of taken a break from official labels for a while. So like, this is wild to me. It's like 6 degrees of Jamie separation.
It's really crazy. We were doing a tour with oh Jesus, I can't remember. Oh, it was with Venom Inc. Toxic was doing a run with Venom Inc. And we were out, and the last show was at St. Vitus, and we got there whatever, noon or something, and there was some disagreement with everything going on inside. I think it had to do with like looking for a drum riser, what anything, like something of a an older artist would be super concerned about. Like, I can't remember what it was, and nothing to like be actually upset about. So we were just like, all right, we'll just wait out here. And we were sitting in the van, and I got a text from Joss. And he said, hey, I just left a podcast with somebody. Where's that song that you wrote, American Made? You had a Dropbox, and you wrote the song called American Made. Where is that? And I'm like, hold on, I could send it to you. And I sent him a link, and I said, I just emailed you. And he goes, okay, when do you guys get home? And I was like, we're playing our last show right now. And he goes, okay, so whatever it was, Tuesday. He goes, I don't want to bother you tomorrow. Could you be in the studio on like Thursday? And I'm like, yeah. And we love Jamie, but sometimes you're like, what are we doing? Because there's been once or twice where, like, I mean, I used to have a full-time job, and he'd be like, I really need you to come down here. And I'd be like, all right. And I would used to haul hazardous waste, and I would like stop my truck, jump out, go in, and it would be like, I'd have to like play the intro to like I'd have to like record the guitar for like metal dudes doing non-metal things or something. And you're like, when you have a full-time job, sometimes you're like, I don't know. I mean, this could have waited till tomorrow probably, but okay, I understand. Like, he has this very infectious like kid energy where it's just like, now it's got to happen now. I'm just so excited. And so he was like, listen, D Snyder, he wants us to write songs for him. So we should write songs for him. And I said, D Snyder, not like Dean Snyder, like with an N, like you, DEE, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And, he said like, there's another song on the record, like Running Mazes. And then like Tomorrow's No Concern, like all the riffs for those songs were sitting in a Dropbox. And we went in, we re-recorded American Made. And Jamie sang like the vocals for it. Like he took my lyrics and my melody, we altered it a tiny bit, and then he said, "Hey, let's put in this like solo section. There's more of like a heavy part." So we put in this heavy part, and then like I'm not kidding, it was like whatever Thursday night, Friday morning we came in. He was like, "Yeah, Sunday D's coming in and sing this song." We were like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's coming in, and because he's in Long Island seeing his family, so he'll be here soon." And you're like, "Holy shit, are you fucking kidding me?" Like I was just getting off a tour, like, and I just didn't want to see anybody for like a week and a half, because a quick insider, like after 14 days in a tour with anybody, you're like, I think I hate this person. Like, you don't even know why. You're just like, for some reason I feel like this is the worst person on earth, and it's like your brother. And then like 2 days later, you're like, oh, I miss him. But like it's just in the moment of it, you're just like very upset, and you're just like run down. And now, like literally 5 days later, we're in the studio with Dee Snider, and we're like working on this stuff, and you're like, holy crap, what the hell is happening? And I think he sang vocals for Running Mazes, and maybe Tomorrow's No Concern, like within a couple days, and we got a record deal. And it was just so weird. But this was like December. We recorded the whole record like between like December and early January. And his summer was already kind of booked, because he already had stuff, with his like that rock, like that kind of hard rock punk album he had done right before. So he assumed that he was still going to be going out with that band. and he was like, listen, this record is too good. I want you guys. And he called me like in April or something and just said, hey, I heard you have a tour with Toxic, but and like I think it was all of August we had a tour with Toxic, and he said, I have one show in August, so let's get some fill-ins for that show, and then I want you to be the music director. You put everybody together, and let's tour in July. We had shows in July. We had shows in like throughout the end of the year, and then all of a sudden, like once the album got greenlit, it was like, there was Australia and this and that, like all this stuff started popping up just out of nowhere. And it was just nuts. And, Dee said we had recorded a couple of the shows that all got made into the DVD. We had the really nice footage from Bloodstock, which they gave us, or, maybe they paid for it. I don't know any of the business side of it, but they just said, Dee told everybody, hey, I just can't do it. I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm just not into it. And I'll be honest with you, the last show, nobody knew. We played with Alice Cooper in like Switzerland. And at the end of the thing, I was like, I want him to keep playing shows. Part of me thinks that this is too perfect of an ending to ever continue, because they brought him out. He sang School's Out with Alice, who was one of Alice's, Alice is one of his heroes. Right. He's out there with Alice singing School's Out. And then they're hitting, the big, doing the big ring out to end the show. And then the drummer goes, boom, 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 boom. And they go, and friggin' Alice Cooper is singing We're Not Gonna Take It with Dee. And they just did the chorus like 2 or 3 times. And you're like, as much as I want you to play shows next year, it's kind of fucking perfect, man. Like I almost, and he's made the joke already. He was so mentally done that he like gave away his show boots that he had for like 25 years. He sent them to a super fan, like wrote a note on them. So that was it. And then when everybody took 2020 off instead of just him, he suddenly wanted to play. But
amazing.
His management just said, listen, just Dee does this all the time. He's not going to really quit. So we're going to do a live album next year.
I pressed him about this, and I know that just like I think his spirit is like You know, I think he's very conscientious to not overstay. I don't think he expected any of this. He does not have to rely on Twisted Sister's greatest hits to be a big star by himself. He also could just do Broadway, or he could just write books, or he could just do movies. I feel like he's that kind of talented guy. But what a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing that on the end of this interview that's about this really important album for you. As a final question,
Yeah.
I have been saving this one. From a scale of like the Van Halens or Diamond Vinny to like Oasis, how is your working relationship or your relationship in general with your brother?
I would say it's somewhere near the best possible thing. We would get in fights when we were younger, like in our teens, and it was kind of a thing, because we were like, we weren't even 18 when we started playing shows, and all of a sudden you get into this like, oh well, if you guys are gonna fight, we're not gonna let you do the band, basically, and we weren't 18 yet, so well, I guess mom's not gonna drive us to the club because we're 15 and we can't get there ourselves. And we're like, okay, all right. And Jasta will tease us and say that, like, oh, another Bellmore argument, and we're like, I mean, we're not really arguing. Like, it's, I mean, we were kids, we'd be like pushing each other downstairs and like falling through tables and crap like that, getting in fights. But um, it just made more sense. Like the music just made more sense than arguing about it, because if you're arguing, I mean, I watched enough of those Black Crows documentaries and all those Oasis kind of things where you're like, well, these two dum dums are busy arguing with each other and they're not writing fucking hits. And then they lose the hunger. And then you're like, oh, let's get back together. And you don't know how to write a song anymore, and it's, the brothers are special and there's a different vibe. Like I wrote a new Kings and Liars song recently. I had no idea where the verse should go. I just sent it to my brother and he sent something back and it sounded like I had written. Like it was just the melody came back and I was like, fuck, like I am so lucky because 99% of the other people in the world would be like, yeah, I don't know. You got to figure that out. Like,
The best possible unplugged ever is Alice in Chains. The worst is probably Oasis, not because it's bad musically, because one brother shit the bed and was like, I'm not going to perform,
Yeah.
and sat in the audience and harangued them the whole time. I
Yeah.
would just get out of my seat and kill that guy.
I will say, as much as I dislike their dynamic, the mean, I don't know which one's the mean brother. I don't know anything. Is
The
it
little
Liam?
one's the mean one.
Yeah,
They're
the
both
Liam
probably
is,
mean, actually.
but
like,
I'm sure they both are. I'm just saying one of them is a lot more outspoken.
yeah,
But
Liam's a shit
um,
talker.
but he's great on Twitter.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't. I don't want to say that because it fuels more people to want to be mean on Twitter. But you're like, I mean, he's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I love their music was for a time fantastic. So, like, yeah, what a weird thing. I'm glad you guys don't have that kind of thing. Charlie, man, congratulations on this Kings and Liars record, and
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to everybody hopefully get the same vibe from it that I got and enjoy it as much as I have. And just thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your contributions to these really amazing records the last few years, plus your own music, which is really something you got to tip the hat to, man, because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of riffs. It's a lot of care.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I want to say thank you for all the fans who are getting to enjoy these things, not just your music, but everybody else's that you worked on. So thank you, brother.
Oh well, you're welcome. That's amazing.